Namaste and greetings. I, Arushi Pathania, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav और नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Talk. We are gathered here today for the IMPRI 7th annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of the Union Budget for the financial year 2026-27. As part of this series, we will be engaging in a panel discussion on education, science and technology, research and development, and Union Budget 2026-27. This discussion is organized by the IMPRI Center for ICT for Development, CICTD, under the IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. I warmly welcome all of you to this insightful deliberation and thank you for tuning in. The chair and moderator is Professor Sachidanand Sinha ji, visiting professor, IMPRI, former professor, Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU, New Delhi. Today's expert panelists include Professor Saumen Chattopadhyay ji, Professor Zakir Hussain Center for Educational Studies, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Dr. Protiva Kundu ji, Thematic Lead, Social Sectors at the Center for Budget and Governance Accountability, CBGA. Professor Binod Khadria, President ji, Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism, co-convener of Metropolis Asia Pacific. Professor Rupamanjari Ghosh ji, expert, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India Committees in Physical Sciences, former Vice Chancellor of Shivnadar University, Delhi NCR, former Professor of Physics and Dean of School of Physical Sciences at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Nalin Bharti, Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Patna, and visiting Senior Fellow IMPRI. Professor Mona Khare ji, Professor and Head, Department of Educational Finance, Director of University Grants Commission, UGC Malviya Mission Teacher Training Center, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, New Delhi, India. The conveners of the program are Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. To begin today's session, I am honored to invite Professor Sachidanand Sinha ji, Chair and Moderator, to share his opening remarks. We welcome you and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of IMPRI, since I'm part of IMPRI also, let me extend my welcome to all the panelists. I think we have a very distinguished panelists specializing in the areas of different aspects of education. Professor Khadria is there, Professor Saumen Chattopadhyay is there, Professor Rupamanjari ji is there. So it would be in fitness of things if we begin with say Protiva Kundu ji, because Protiva Kundu would perhaps present a kind of an outline for all of us to understand as to what is there in the Union Budget 25-26 insofar as education, basically the two major segments of education is concerned, as the school education and higher education, then science and technology, research and so on, development. So we'll have something from her presentation. I think that would be the first item that we should have, so that we have some exposure to of course the finer aspects that she would like to talk about with reference to school closures and so on and so forth, with reference to NEP and its objectives and how the objectives are being advanced through these budgetary allocations and so on and so forth. I think if we move on to Dr. Kundu, that would be better, so that we have something on the board at the moment to begin with. So over to Dr. Kundu.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, one disclaimer is now I am with Center for Social and Economic Progress, not CBGA. And okay, let me start. They have an initial presentation. I don't have any presentation. So should I go
Yeah, if Arushi, do you have a presentation at the moment?
Yes.
On the budget?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So please, let's go through
Yeah.
that,
After
and then
Arushi, I will come.
yeah,
Yeah.
then we'll come to
Sure, sir. Just a minute. I'll be
yeah.
sharing the screen. Sir, I hope the PPT is visible
Yes.
to the panelists. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So good morning,
Arushi, go
everyone.
full screen, please. Go to presentation mode, full screen.
This is actually a PDF, not a presentation. It's not the PPT screen.
Okay, Control plus L. Just click anywhere on the slide and then Control plus L.
Arushi, you can start. I'm presenting, and you can just tell me when to move on to next page. I'll move.
Right. All right. So, good morning, everyone. This is our presentation on the Union Budget 2026-27 for the sectors of education, science and technology, and research and development as a part of IMPRI's 7th annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis. Can we move forward to the next slide? All right, thank you. So the budget estimates are as follows. The 2026-27 budget expands investment in education with a clear emphasis on quality, employability, STEM, digital skills, and infrastructure expansion, aligning with the government's vision of linking education to employment and enterprise. The total budget allocated to the education sector is 1.39 lakh crores, which has been the highest ever, which is also an 8.27% increase over the previous years. The Department of School Education and Literacy has been allocated a budget of around rupees 83,562.26 crores, which is again an increase of 6.35% as compared to the previous budget. The Department of Higher Education has been allocated a budget of rupees 78,496.22 crores, and which is again an increase of 11.28% compared to the financial year of 2025-26. Can we move forward? Right. So as we can see that the budget allocation to major educational bodies is as follows. The central universities have received a budget allocation of 17,440 crores, which again is an increase of 4.49%. UGC, which is the University Grants Commission, it is 3709 crores, which is 11.18% of an increase. IITs all across India have received around 12,123 crores, which is a 6.82% increase from the previous year. NITs all across India have received around 6,260, which is a 10.07% increase. Deemed universities in India have received around 650 crores, which is a 7.62% increase from the previous financial year. And Indian Institute of Management, IIMs across India have received around 292 crores, which is a 15.92% increase from the previous financial year. Can we move forward? All right. So Budget allocation for ongoing schemes are as follows. The Multidisciplinary Education and Research Improvement in Technical Education, EAP, which is also called MERIT, has received about 300 crores, which has an increase of 89.43% from the previous financial year. World-class institutions have received 900 crores, which is 36.36%. Of an increase. Establishment, the scheme which concerns with the establishment of 3 centers of excellence in artificial intelligence, which is AI, has received about 250 crores, which is a 25% increase. The ongoing scheme of PM Usha has received about 1,850 crores, which is 1.93% of an increase from the previous financial year. And the National Apprenticeship Training Scheme, which is NATS, has received about 1,250 crores, which is a 6.11% increase from the previous financial year. Can we please move forward? Thank you. There have been 2 new schemes which have been introduced with the present union budget, and the budget allocation are as follows. For the first scheme, which is the PM Research Chair, which is also PMRC, has received a budget of about 200 crores, and the Center for Excellence in Artificial Intelligence, AI for Education, has received about 100 crores of budget allocation. Can we move to the next slide, please? The highlights from the budget are as follows. One of the key proposals have been that there has been an establishment of a high-powered Education to Employment and Enterprise Standing Committee. A high-powered committee will be formed to bridge the gap between education, employment, and entrepreneurship. It has integrated academic zones. The other proposal has been for university townships, which will be providing support to states to create 5 university townships near major industrial and logistic corridors. There has also been a recognition of the challenges faced by female students during long laboratory and study hours. So in order to rectify that, there has been, through VGF and capital support, a proposal to establish 1 girls' hostel in every district to address challenges for girl students in STEM institutions. There has also been a proposal to establish a National Institute of Hospitality, where existing management councils will be upgraded to create a national institute that bridges academia and industry. A pilot scheme to upskill 10,000 guides in 20 iconic tourist sites through a 12-week training course module in collaboration through Indian Institute of Management, IIMs, has also been proposed within the present budget. Can we move to the next slide, please? So other highlights from the budget are that in the sports, launch of Khelo India mission to facilitate integrated talent development supported by training centers, systemic development of coaches, support staff, integration of sports science and technology, competitions and leagues have been proposed to promote sports culture and development of sports infrastructure for training and competition. There has also been a launch of Divyangjan Kaushal Yojana to facilitate employment of Divyangjans in the field of IT, AVGC, hospitality, food, and beverages sectors, requiring skilling of Divyangjans in these areas. Further, under the Divyang Sahara Yojana, high-quality assistive devices will be provided for all eligible Divyangjans by scaling up production of assistive devices, research, and AI integration. There has also been an emphasis on mental health in the current budget, for which mental stress and trauma has been considered as a growing cause of concern among our youth. So the budget here announces setting up of Nimhans institutes in the northern part of India and upgrade the existing national mental health institutes in the cities of Ranchi and Tezpur and regional apex institutes. There has also been a proposal to establish veterinary and para-vet colleges, veterinary hospitals, diagnostic laboratories, and breeding facilities in the private sector, including through foreign collaborations. Can we move to the next slide, please? There has also been, the annual budget also provides a strong support for science and tech, deeply linking it to industrial competitiveness, advanced manufacturing, AI, semiconductor research, biotech innovation, and global tech leadership. One of the emphasis has been placed on making India an orange economy, which is an AVGC sector. The industry demand is for animation, visual effects, gaming, and comics. to be projected to need 2 million professionals by the year of 2030. There has also been an emphasis on educational integration, support for the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies, Mumbai, to set up AVGC content creator labs in 15,000 secondary schools and 500 colleges. There has also been a proposal to upgrade and setting up of 4 major facilities in terms of space and science infrastructure: National Large Solar Telescope, National Large Optical Infrared Telescope, Himalayan Chandra Telescope, Cosmos 2 Planetarium. Can we move to the next slide, please? The budget has also announced the launch of India Semiconductor Mission ISM 2.0 to produce equipment and materials, design full-stack Indian IP, and fortify supply chains. The focus will be on industry-led research and training centers to develop technology and skilled workforce. A provision of rupees 1,000 crores has been made towards this financial year 2026-27. There has also been an emphasis on the electronics components manufacturing scheme, which was earlier launched in April 2025 with an outlay of 7,22,919 crores, which already has investment commitments at double the target. It has now been proposed to increase the outlay to rupees 40,000 crores to capitalize on the momentum. In order to support the IT sector as India's growth engine and to provide tax certainty, the budget 2026-27 has also proposed new safe harbor provisions for IT and ITES with higher threshold and competitive margin. Consolidated categorization, software development, IT-enabled services, KPO, and contract R&D will be clubbed under a single banner, which is Information Technology Services category. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you.
So I think, now we can have round one of the comments from all the first round of comments from the panelists. So if Protiva would like to add something to the allocation statistics which have been presented here, or maybe this is, or maybe the some of the important aspects that she would like to flag. And particularly, I would like the presentations to be divided in 3 parts. One is, of course, the school education, because we have had 2020 NEP and it's 5th year now. We have completed. So where do we stand with reference to all the objectives? Or our goalposts are shifting from one objective to another. Similarly, with higher education and so on and so forth. And then we'll go to the science and technology and R&D, where Rupa ji and our friend Nalin would be. Of course, others are also can comment, but we would like to hear from them also. Okay, Prativa. So you have just take about 5 to 6 minutes, so that we are in a position to have equitable time allocated to everybody.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, IMPRI, for giving me this opportunity. Let me start, before going to the budget, let me start with another document, that is economic survey, that we get every year just before the budget get presented. And this year's economic survey, especially the school education chapter, is quite, I would say it's very well written, and it has identified some of the key challenges that the education sector is facing. Though the economic survey has looked at education as investment towards high quality of human capital, not necessarily the human development concept is any more coming for the education sector, but still it is talking about that many years of schooling in India is very less, and that for that to work on that, the focus should be on foundational literacy and numeracy and early childhood care and education. Then it is talking about the usual learning assessment that is prevailing, like the assessment should be more meaningful, and it's just not marks what you are getting in board exam or in different learning assessment happening through different tests. So that way, and then it has also focused on the disjunct between school and skill, and from there the work. So there is a need to integrate schools to skill pathways. So in this was the first important vision that what we can see from the economic survey. Then comes the next thing, what is we can see or we can hear is the budget speech. So when we move to the budget speech that our finance minister presented, we have seen that budget has given education to employment and enterprise at its heart of its vision for Viksit Bharat, and it is emphasizing on better schools, stronger skills, and smooth pathways to employment. Now, this narrative is not new because whenever I was looking at 2024-25 budget speech, 25-26 budget speech, in all those budget speech, it has been articulated the similar goal that 100% quality school education and 100% skilled labor with meaningful employment. So, in this background, then when we look at the education budget, we have seen that Ministry of Education has received 1.39 lakh crore this year, which is an increase of 8.8% around from the last year's budget estimate, and which comes around 2.6% of the total union budget and 0.36% of the GDP. So again, we need to, every time we talk about this Kothari Commission 6% of GDP benchmark, but we need to continue this discussion because still union government is giving 0.36% of GDP. So the rest we will be expecting from the states. And national education policy is also talking about 6%. So where we are from that, one of the lenses here. But the second thing is, since budget is not only about this year's budget estimate, it's also about the actual expenditure of 24-25 and revised estimate of 25-26. So when we looked at that, we have seen that there is around 16,000 crore unspent balance between 24-25 and 25-26. 25-26, it was around 6,700 crore, and 24-25, it was around 9,900 crore. That means what is getting allocated, even there, the whole money is not, central is not releasing the total amount of money. This is the first thing that we have observed. Now that needs to be looked in a more larger macro perspective. When we have seen the total government expenditure, uh, the total government expenditure as percentage of GDP is actually declined is in the last few years, and 26 27, this is one of the lowest, you can say, because it is around 13.6% of total budgeted expenditure, the size of total budgeted expenditure, 13.6% of GDP. And within that, where the social sector expenditure is placed, social sector expenditure of the total union budget, it is coming around again 19% or 21%, which is again 21%, which is again one of the lowest. And since social sector expenditure, there is the government is looking towards fiscal consolidation, there is certain fiscal deficit size 4.3% of GDP has been the government is going to achieve, and the fiscal consolidation is happening through the decline in the social sector expenditure, and that is getting reflected in the education budget also. So while we can see we have celebrating that there is in nominal terms 8% increase, but if we take into consideration the inflation, then probably it would be it might be stagnant or it might be lesser than that. That exercise hasn't been done yet, but that is the scenario. Now, within the coming to school education, there are promises in the national education policy that universalization of school education from pre-primary to higher secondary. But the budget that has been given 83,562 crore, Department of School Education for this years. Again, we need to look back a little bit what happened in the last year. And till December 25-26, the budget that we have received till December, Department of School Education has able to spend only 41%. Last year also the spending was little bit higher at this time, 47%. But अभी तक December तक अगर 41% spent कर पाए, that means the remaining 3 months of the fiscal year, we won't see a very, I mean, there is a chance of actual expenditure for 25-26 would be much less, and it would have impact on all the different schemes and programs that Department of School Education running. This year's allocation, even if we look at that, Samagra Shiksha Abhijan, that is the key centrally sponsored schemes, which is actually taking care of all the, I mean, pre-primary to secondary education, all the government and government-aided schools education, that has got only an hardly 850 crore increase from the previous year's budget estimate, whereas the other so-called School of Excellence, all model schools like Kendriya Vidyalaya, PM Sri, or Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Iklabur residential model schools, everywhere there is substantial increase in the budget. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind that for especially PM Sri school, that around 7,500 crore has been given to this particular scheme, but the last year's utilization, or even the previous years, last years, it never crossed the 60% in the last 2 fiscal years. Still, these schemes are giving more emphasis. So, and sort of we can see from this a narrative like exclusivity over universality. If we can see the pattern from there, when we look at the other particular aspects where they're trying to depending on the nature is trying to depending so much on the sales and surcharges in uh, uh, overall revenue collections, revenue receipt part, and also when it comes to education, that this Samagra Shiksha PM portion 100% is getting financed through sales, and the Department of School Education's 72% of this department's budget is getting financed through education sales. Whereas there is CAG report also, it's showing even sales money is not getting utilized. It is lying with the consolidated fund, main large number of, especially I would like to here highlight early childhood education. One of the, we only talk about Ministry of Education when it comes to school education, but when early childhood education, where Ministry of Women and Child Development plays an important role, there we can see that the schemes through which the money is going for the Anganwadi centers or Saksham Anganwadi and Mission Poshan 2, and there is also very marginal increase in the budget. So and also there an effort already from NEP we have seen that Saksham Anganwadi or Anganwadi centers have been seen as a platform to provide school education, and towards that there the government is working towards training, giving training to the Anganwadi workers under Poshan Bhi Padhai Bhi campaign. But then that is also, if we look at the data, I mean, that is debatable. We are not going into that why there is different kinds of quality and training. But even if we go by that, in the last 5 years, only 40% Anganwadi workers got some kind of training for the early childhood care and education. And most of the children of 3 to 6 years are actually going to the Anganwadi centers, not the pre-primary sections of regular schools, because uh, there is not many schools which has that pre-primary sections. I think only 27% government and government school has that facility. A little bit jump from school to skill, because that has been emphasis, that has given enough emphasis in the union budget. But
Uh,
even if we,
Dr.
yeah, I'm
Kundu,
just, yeah,
we'll come to skill a little later.
okay,
Maybe
fine. Then
we
let
just
me,
concentrate on school education for the time being. After
then
say
let me stop
receiving say,
here.
and then we can come back to skill and at Professor Khadria.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir, from New Jersey.
Thank, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, surely.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was a very good beginning
Mm.
with the presentation on the budget, and then Protiva Kundu's points that have been mentioned. And I think she also mentioned, and I think that's always the starting point of any discussion on education and spending on education or education budget, the 60-year-old target, now 60-year-old. It was set up in 1964-66 Kothari Commission to be achieved in 20 years. We are 40 years behind that, but yet there is no sign, yet it is far from 6%. Now, I have raised in last two meetings, last two budgets when we met here, I had raised this point, what is sacrosanct about this 6%? Why the Kothari Commission had mentioned 6%? And many of us did not have answer to that because we are not even taught to ask that question. That 6% was because at that point in time, education sector contributed 6% to the GDP. For the GDP's constitution, if you if you deconstruct the GDP, then 6% of the GDP was contribution of the education sector. So it was quid pro quo. What education gives, education should get back. You know, that has not been even addressed. Not even I'll doubt if the ministry people or the people who are managers have given a thought to this or know about this background. So this is something which is very important. And if we look at that, we have to ask a different question. What is the contribution? What is the quantum of contribution or percentage of contribution of education today in GDP? Is it still stuck at 6% or is it much more? Or is it less? That question has to be posed. That question, otherwise it is, you know, we are always talking about this without without a mention. It has become just a stereotype. So having said that, I think the questions about the figures that have been cited, that there is 8% increase in the overall budget over the last year, I think these discussions have, they don't carry much of a weight, you know, because we have to put them in relation to the actual value or volume of the budget that has been allocated. If it is 139,000 crore rupees this time, then how much, what percentage does it make of the overall? You know, those two have, if 1 year it is rising by 8%, next year you don't expect that it should go to 10%. It can actually slide down. Like many of the schemes that have been mentioned today, you know, the schemes, some of them have 80% increase. Why? Because the last year they did not have anything. And some of them had only a 2 or 3% increase. That's because they already were allocated much larger quantum last year. So I think these have to be seen in that light, and then we can have a comparison on that. But I would like to just spend my time on the salient features of this budget. One is 5 university township, 5 universities township near the industrial hubs. Now, this raises questions. Why near the industrial hubs? Do we not have enough pollution? What about climate change? Are we aware of the climate change? What is happening? Now, you know, Geeta Gopinath had mentioned that the cost of the pollution is much higher than what would be the cost of the tariff war on India. You know, we have to put it in that perspective, that whether we have this awareness about the universities coming near these industrial township. If there is a lot of pollution, we are going to expose our students to that kind of a danger, you know, and their life would be at danger. I'm just pointing this out, that we need to raise these issues. We may not have the answer. Secondly, every district should have a girls' hostel to promote STEM education. Why only STEM education? Girls' safety is very important across the board. So this should be, I think, broad-based, and particularly in the context of the abstain files today, you can understand how vulnerable our children are, particularly women and girl children are. So they have to be actually brought into that context in terms of what is happening. I'm not even mentioning the tariff war. Having said that, I would like to say that this budget does not address the issue of teacher supply. Where are the teachers going to come from? That there is a linkages, even if school education has to be expanded, then the teachers will come from higher education. So that linkage is very important to be taken into account. And if that is there, then that has to be based on what is happening to the age structural transformation over time. In simple words, what is happening to the demographic dividend. Because we are not going to have the demographic dividend forever. And if that structural change is taking place in the age structure, then that has to be matched in the budget accordingly in perspective planning, because we are thinking of not only next year, we are thinking of Vikasit Bharat, which is 22, 21 years away from now. So it has to be put in this, because this budget mentions it is for Yuva Shakti and Vikasit Bharat. So we need to take that into account. Having said that, I think there are a number of other issues that can be taken up later on. Protiva has already mentioned about AVGC, creativity and creative disciplines and so on, so forth, in terms of employability. So those things can be addressed by our other colleagues, and then we can take up the other issues. Thank you, Sir Sachidanand. We can't hear you. You are muted. Can you
Thank you,
unmute
Professor
yourself?
Khadria. Yeah, thank you very much. We can now move on to Rupamanjari ji for your brief comment. Particularly, I would like you to concentrate on, say, the STEM education and related issues, Atal, incubation centers in the schools, and how it's going to perhaps encourage vocationalization and maybe creative learning and so on and so forth. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I have actually prepared a few slides. I won't take too long, but I think just to address the questions, I have more broad philosophical things that I see. That's a problem we are drifting towards.
Yeah.
So let me start sharing. Okay. I hope you can see my slides.
Not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it has just come. Let me just say something that I had said it, I think, even last time, that education is the most important pillar in national building. And I think we have not quite absorbed the impact of this statement in our blood. The question I'm asking, are we investing enough, and are we investing right? So if physical infrastructure builds roads for growth, education and R&D build the engine. That's maybe it's a common man's language that people should be able to appreciate. So what I hear from the budget speech, but I don't really see the sustainable growth aspect, because it says that the themes of education, ST and R&D are central to India's three duties approach, three kartavya that the finance minister talked about. So in brief, sustainable economic growth, capacity building, and sabka saath, sabka vikas. So I think I'm going to have this background when I bring out some points. So before that, already it has been shared very nice by IMPRI, but let me just say, what are the priorities? And it says that education, skilling, digital public infrastructure, and strategic technologies are national priorities. Very good. But the real question for me is not the intent, but the impact. So are allocations translating into learning outcomes, employability, and innovation capacity? I'll add something more to this. I'm just coming to it. Then are we building scale, or are we building just capability? And are we measuring what truly matters? So scaling, increasing number of seats and all of it, I see it continuously happening. But who is testing whether we are building the capability that would be needed tomorrow? So only 4 points. I'll not say too much. Already you've seen the numbers, and I really struggle to get through all the numbers correctly. So there is a budget allocation for education, but what I am questioning is it going from capacity building to capability building to quality assurance? There are new initiatives you heard of. I would not talk about it, but definitely there are challenges, right? Every time we talk about it, despite higher allocation, past trends show significant differences between budgeted and actual spending. Nobody's talking about that. Quality and outcomes concern remain about whether increased funding will address the learning quality gap, as highlighted by student groups. Those who are in charge of students, you hear it from all quarters. The infrastructure deficit, roughly 67,000 schools. I mean, I don't want to talk about school education much because that's not my core competence area. But you are aghast in the higher education sector. When I get news of this kind, that 67,000 schools still lack adequate toilets, and many in rural areas suffer from broken infrastructure. So what are we talking about really in hi-fi research? So the second point I want to make is science and technology. Okay, there has been allocation, and this is my area. Is it digital and future ready? This is actually a question. So budget highlights AI-enabled learning, silent kind of on quantum technology. There is a mention. There is a 6,000 crore allocation last time, and it hasn't come. Only 2,000 crore are being spent. It's we don't have a magic wand that you start yesterday and today you have a mature quantum technology to deliver to defense and other services. So we need to have that sustained effort in and be serious enough to be competitive globally. I don't see that. I've been an expert in this national quantum mission for 2 years now. And so there are questions that I can bring out later. And space exploration. So of course you heard what all had been allocated: AICOE, space research, semiconductor mission. But what I find again is digital divide. Again, if you look at schools and the tinkering labs that you talked about, 57% of schools have functional computer labs. So that's not 100%, not even 90%, not even 60%. So this is difficult to bridge the digital divide in rural areas. So there is a volatility of funding. Key areas like the National Supercomputing Mission, it saw drastic cuts in this estimate this year, despite a revised estimate in the previous year. So I don't quite understand what is being propagated and where is the consistency in our budget allocation. Then the third one that everybody can see is research and development, is the emphasis on lab to market transition. So there is a shift in strategy. I would say the focus is moving from grant-based support to a full-fledged innovation financing architecture. You saw the RDI, the NRF, the Biopharma Shakti, laudable ones, but the challenges are commercialization. You can't just wish it. You need to have strong research depth, which we have, but now we are losing it somewhat. But you are historically weak pathways to commercialize innovations. You need private R&D investment. Maybe you need stronger tax incentives to encourage private sector R&D in AI and deep tech. But that I don't see any effort towards that. There is something that everybody talked about, and that brings me to my key point, and I'll probably leave with that big thought, that there is a fiscal consolidation. You heard that the deficit is estimated 4.3% of GDP, but this is at what cost? And I think Protiva made a point that I agree completely with. If you analyze, probably at the cost of things that we should be emphasizing on, the education to employment push. A high-powered committee called Education to Employment and Enterprise Standing Committee has been proposed to focus on the services sector as a core driver of Vikshit Bharat. I don't oppose this, but the education for me is now getting reoriented to serve the economy, and that's the sole purpose. So Atmanirbharata through skilling and innovation. For me as an educator, this is not ambitious enough. You can't be a guru, you can't be a leader if you are just serving the economy. So you would be always playing the catch up and never be dominating the international scene. The point I raised even last time, but maybe not this candidly, is that we need to understand technology. There is a lot of emphasis, a lot of talk in the budget about it. And technology, of course, can address big issues of access and affordability in the higher education system. And we are seeing some part of it while attempting to maintain reasonable quality. I'm not saying that it maintains, but it can actually maintain reasonable quality. And digital platforms do allow personalized learning aligned to a learner's pace, interest, and abilities, and you can do it at scale, at the population scale. But access alone is not enough. We need digital literates, of course, to understand and learn the techniques, but you also need digital enablers or innovators. And if enough emphasis in the higher education sector has to be on this innovation part, on this enabling part. People will create this technology and not just be users of the technology. But technology alone is not a silver bullet. It's not a solution by itself for our problems of food, clean air, nobody talked about it, clean water, healthcare, energy. So research in basic sciences, of course, I have a bias as a physicist, but I think everybody can see that basic sciences will continue to be the foundation of inventions that the world has been waiting for. These are not innovations. These are not commercial tweaking of one feature or the other, but actually solving the global problems. You talked about sustainability. You talked about climate changes. But where is healthcare? Where is just food security? Where is clean air, clean water? So education has to lead to R&D of this physical kind, not the AI kind, to keep the desperate dream of a sustainable and equitable world alive. AI will then be an enabler and multiplier, and we must remember this very, very dearly when we are planning our budget. There are questions. Again, I have four questions. NEP 2020, I mean, you just leave it in the dump. Are we seeing sufficient investment in teacher training, interdisciplinary education, research-linked universities, or is the focus still skewed towards structural changes without enough academic depth? And that's the problem. We need better faculty, stronger research culture, world-class labs to support meaningful inventions, meaningful industry collaboration. The employability gap, and here is my take on it. Are the new university townships and AVGC labs that you saw enough to reduce the persistent skill-job mismatch? How tightly are universities, industry, and research ecosystems actually integrated? We have not asked that question. Are students being trained for today's jobs? That's it. Or are we training them for tomorrow's capabilities? That depth is missing from every hint that I get. The indigenous capabilities, can the R&D funding, for example, semiconductors, biopharma, create true technological self-reliance? You need to go back to the ground realities of this country. And you have mission after mission that we have seen and see the output from all of it. And are we competitive enough to handle internationalization? Digital inclusivity, will the digital knowledge grid bridge or widen the urban-rural divide? It can bridge, provided you take note of what is actually plaguing it. So I end with these two comments that lessons learned, should have been, but without proper planning and investment, we'll always lag behind and play only catch up. And that's my regret. Without proper data, meaning record and analysis, there are no insights. So, excuse me. So there are no shortcuts to quality development. So as the budget really moved beyond capacity building to true capability building. And that's something that we should be addressing. And the second point is that, where is the report card? It cannot just be financial audit. We need a national report card on outcomes and outcomes of the kind of depth that I talked about. So how do you judge the effectiveness of the budget's allocation for education, S&T and RD? And you have to monitor it. What mechanisms are in place to ensure that funds are used efficiently? I'll stop for now, and Sachin, and then open it up for further discussions. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you. I think, we have been making important points. I think all the the panelists. Yeah, we are certainly, as I said, that right from NEP 2020, the goals that were set up there. Are we really following? Do we have anything, which could perhaps tell us as to, well, this is what we anticipated in this 5 years. This is what we have achieved. This is what remains. And so that kind of white paper we don't have. Whatever we have is through what, say, some of these statistical organizations like or the agencies trying to tell us. It's very important, the question that, Professor Khadria also raised, why only STEM? And it's also very important for us to, in fact, note that when we talk about STEM, and I've been raising this point even in the last budgetary meeting that we had of a similar kind after the last year's budget, that, do we really know as to what is the percentage of higher secondary schools where STEM education is still not introduced in this country? I mean, there's no science teacher. I mean, say, for example, in class 11th and 12th and so on and so forth, we don't have even labs. And so at some stage, we did have that kind of statistics, but I don't know whether there is any latest information for us to rely on. Going back to the basics, I mean, say for example, uh, 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 the economic survey talks about, that the learning abilities have enhanced in school and so on and so forth. At the same time, we have such only about 4 days back, we had a news that almost about 50% of schools in Rajasthan, government schools in Rajasthan, were in dilapidated condition. In fact, one of the schools, the roof had collapsed and 7 children died sometimes back. But well, this is a story which comes from every nook and corner of India. Uh, about the early childhood education again, while the statistics may be telling us that 27% of schools have some kind of preschool education facilities, there is no validation to these, other than the fact that, DIAS collects data from schools, and, it has a very biased kind of an structure of collecting data. So we really don't know what kind of, and I can tell you out of my own experience working with the Karnataka Education Commission just about last year, and we did conduct some kind of survey in Kalburgi district, and we found that, a fairly large number of primary schools did not have uh, pre-primary sections, and those which had pre-primary sections were in an utter bad condition. Much of the responsibility again is not with the central government; it is also with the state government. But given the fact that there has been shrinkage of uh, resources at the school at the state level, how much can they really expand? And when the as Khadria Saab said that there's 8% increase is absolutely meaningless. And on the other hand, when we listen to Protiva, she said that a fairly good amount of resources remain unspent altogether. I mean, we made allocations, but we could never spend the money. That means all these are impacting whatever goals that we had in mind. So, so keeping some of these issues, I would now like to address. I would not like to move on to Nalin, Bharti, and Saumen. Nalin ji, what is your take on general take on the budget, but more specifically on science, technology part and R&D?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Over to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, first, I will briefly point out some of the things from the budget, and then I will also try to connect it with the larger context in which we have to travel, because currently we are running in a world which is globally connected, and we have lots of interdependency for every activity which we are planning today. So if we see just the science and technology part, I have noted down that there are three clear priorities which is emerging in the budget. That is, first is the mission mode technologies. The second is large scale public sector research infrastructure. And third is the technological sovereignty of the country. So I see the allocation, especially towards science and technology and energy this year. So this is considered around 3.1% more expenditure. And under this, 55,700.
3.1% over the last year. Is that what you're saying?
3.1%.
Which is not much. In fact,
not much. No,
which
this
is
not
if adjusted by the inflation, it may come to negative also.
But what we see, which was also pointed out by Professor Ghosh, that budget is now looking at how can we basically move from innovation to market. How can we put our innovative efforts for the commercialization? So there are various things like Biopharma Shakti, a strategy for healthcare advancement through knowledge, technology, and innovation scheme, rupees 10,000 crore over the next 5 years was allotted. And the second point is especially the NIPER. So 3 new NIPER and then upgrading of 7 existing ones, probably pharmaceutical sector, innovation and marketing of those new innovative items may be the target now. Again, semiconductor mission, expanded India's semiconductor capabilities, and we find that semiconductor mission 2, which will be launched to produce equipment and materials designed full stack Indian IP. This is again having the allocation of 1,000 crore. Apart from electronic component manufacturing schemes, establishing another high-tech tool rooms, enhancement of construction and infrastructure equipment, carbon capture, utilization and storage, emerging technologies. Again, budget is focusing towards the AI and the Bharat Vistar, again linking virtually integrated system to access agriculture resources. So we have lots of many new schemes, and we can see here that there is a what we say very much objective. Lots of objectives are being compiled together, coordinated with different type of schemes. Artificial Limbs Manufacturing Corporation of India. So what we see that lots of pressure is somehow reflected in the budget, that in many sectors we need reforms, we need investment in R&D. And the second part, which we said that investment in public sector enterprises, that is R&D projects of Bhabha Atomic Research Centers, nuclear power projects, research and development projects for atomic energy, system for promotion of coal, lignite, funds for DPIIT, R&D for defense, Prime Minister Research Chair, R&D in IT, electronics, and biopolar transistors, India AI mission. So we find that somehow even the allocation is not too much, but the objective and what we say the pressure on the government, especially for reforming India, making India Atmanirbhar, taking new types of schemes and connecting it with the public sector research as well as the new investment to drive the market research and market-oriented research. But what I'm gathering here, that there is a stagnation in terms of R&D expenditure in India. It is hardly 0.6% to 0.7% in last many years of our GDP. So compared to other countries, this is not even 1/4, not even in terms of percentage of the GDP. It's a very small percentage. But what is very strangeful and what is very innovative and very appreciable for India is the India's growing innovative index in terms of global innovation index. We are climbing new steps, and this is very remarkable that even if with very small investment, India's present conditions in patent, trademark, integrated circuit, industrial design is improved a lot. So in 1969, Paul Krugman has given a theory that North innovate and the South imitate. Now China, India, and many other countries are proving that it is not only North innovate, but South also innovates. And with a certain amount of investment, if we are doing that much of job and lots of new responsibilities in the global market, we are going to fulfill. And today's world is different from 1969 world, because today we have lots of global regulations, TRIPS agreement, and countries are eyeing upon each other. We are taking care of everybody's R&D with lots of there are legal scanners in which we have to travel. But still, the way India has performed with this limited budget, I think that more innovation in R&D, and especially even Professor Ghosh was talking about the missing link between the industry academia. It's not only putting industry close to the industry physically, but it is very important that industry and academia must have the emotional relationship. That emotional relationship is very weak compared to other countries. So I have personally seen that even if some industries are trying to collaborate in some of the institutions at the government level, also they have to face lots of bureaucratic delays, and because of that, investors don't feel investing in these running projects, because especially in R&D, any delay, even a month delay, create lots of harm, because we have to compete globally, and if somebody is filing a patent in advance, they will have the right and we will be the loser. So time is very important key. In fact, with investment, the most important is the time, how quickly and how promptly you are doing your research with lots of evidence, and how you are protecting it. And then it comes for the commercialization. So this industry academia linkage is not only important at the level of only R&D, but post R&D also. So more quick action we are having at the R&D level, more collaborative efforts we are having at the grassroots level, more we will have the better understanding and cooperation in future. So a project killed today, it means that a project, not only one project we are killing, but we are also killing many more projects for the future. So India has to look for all these things, and I think that there are chances that if we can really look for more academia and industry collaboration, then it can be a better chance for us to compete globally, because we are having much better capacity than other country, especially in R&D sector also, because our own people are working outside and they are contributing a lot for other labs and for other research groups. So I think I can again come back second time, but
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Bharti. this raises a question as to whether, flowing from what you just said, that, with whatever little resources we have been doing better. I think, this story has been there all through. I mean, for whatever little that we have spent in whichever sector, particularly in education, science, technology, R&D, the outcomes, it has a certain kind of a lag. You invest in a certain area, it doesn't, the outcomes do not happen tomorrow. It takes time, so we are perhaps, can one say that, we have, and Rupa ji will perhaps be the best person to say that, but we'll come back to her, because can we say that we have reached a place where, we have done sufficient, or there is enough investment in science, in basic sciences, and so on and so forth, and the technology would perhaps, would benefit from it, or the technological development would benefit from it? The second question is that, do we um, are we spending enough in the public sector to attract private sector investment, or to what extent private sector? Because you raise the point that private sector is not so much willing to invest in public sector institutions and so on and so forth. Even the track record of the public sector, insofar as R&D expenditure is concerned, is not very good in this country. I mean, I think the government has been doing much better than perhaps the private sectors. But maybe with the changed economic architecture and also the ecosystems, things are likely to change, and I'm quite hopeful. But yeah, Professor Saumen, I think we have had one round, and we would like to listen to you at the end. You have the advantage of also addressing many questions, or the observations which have arisen, so that and also throw up certain additional questions, so that we can move to the second round of responses. So over to you, Professor Saumen Chattopadhyay.
Okay, a very good morning. Really, I enjoyed all the previous presentations, particularly Professor Khadria, Professor Ghosh, Nalin ji, and Protiva, and you. It's difficult, but I have changed what I wanted to speak. Let me begin with my take on what Professor Khadria began with, and then Professor Ghosh, education as a pillar of economic growth. See, the contribution of education cannot be measured in terms of GDP, for the simple reason that it does much more than that, particularly in the realm of the social order, other than the economic order, and the kind of externalities that education generates for knowledge, as well as our to make us responsible citizen, which is extremely vital for the maintenance of the social political order. So education deserves much more, and it's good to see that the government of India has integrated education reform as a part of realizing the goal of Viksit Bharat. And already it has been emphasized that it is a human capital centric approach. But my problem is, I'm using the same word Professor Ghosh mentioned, reorientation of the education sector without there being a robust and a solid foundation, both at the school level as well as the higher education level. Professor Sinha, you mentioned about government of Karnataka. I got an exposure to, so let me begin with the statistics. The government of India disseminates. So I'm not quoting any other statistic. All India statistics of All India Survey of Higher Education 21-22 tells us that the number of colleges in India with less than 200 students, the percentage of it is 35.2. And the college having enrollment in the range of 200 to 1,000 is 46.1. So the size of the colleges, it's true for the government of Karnataka, because I also got an exposure to work with the data as you did. And it tells me it's a terrible shape, because every discipline doesn't have adequate number of teachers, for the simple reason the size of the colleges are terribly low and the budget constraint is perennial and ubiquitous. So this is a terrible problem. The second problem, The economic survey last year said, and it's really terrible, that if you look at the PLFS 23-24, then 88.2% of the workforce had engaged with the low skilled and semi skilled, 88.2, and 90.2% of the workforce had education barely up to secondary level. So you can see the close match between low level of education with low level of skill, ending up with a situation low wage economy. And then we are talking about the Viksit Bharat, focusing exclusively on the numerator, the $1 trillion economy, forgetting about the fact that denominator is 1.46 or something like that. Right? So this is a terrible situation. The other public, the digital divide, Professor Ghosh mentioned, I'll just reiterate before I come to the budget data, I will not take much time. What I found that the public-private divide is actually accentuating the divide, the digital divide. Why I'm saying so? Some of the very elite private schools are in a position to spend heavily to revamp their IT infrastructure. They are teaching their students coding from a very young age, and parents have become really very crazy so that the students become tech savvy and they learn coding at a very young age. I don't know whether it should be the right thing to do, but the government funded schools, I'm from a government school, so I can tell you what's happening in my school. We are not in a position, the government funded schools are not in a position to spend that heavily. Good or bad is a different matter. I'm not going to get into this. We are not being able to spend that money at all. So there is a huge differentiation within the private school, elite versus low cost, huge differentiation within the government school because of the, even in Delhi, that is very much the case. And then you see within the higher education institution, there are world-class universities and then central universities, then state universities, and look at the budgetary allocation of the state government for the state-funded universities. So, and within the private, so there is a wide, there's the processes of one of differentiation that is getting accentuated. And that differentiation is quite inevitable, but it is further getting accentuated by the policy frame. Why? Because the foundation is weak, and you are trying to reorient the budget too early so that it is getting intricately linked with the growth. So the foundation is very weak. Let me just come to a couple of numbers. Budget net numbers have well been presented, so I'm not going to spend much time on this. But some numbers I thought that I should. You see, when I'm going to compare the budgetary allocation for 26-27, I should also look at the revised estimate for 25-26 that compared to what was budgeted for. Because any cut in a particular item compared to what was budgeted for is also an indication how the expenditure compression has been achieved. Because in this budget, there was a revenue shortfall of 1.2 lakh crore because of the GST cut and the income tax cut. And then the fiscal deficit has been achieved at 4.3%, is going to be achieved 4.3% in 26-27 in terms of GDP. That means the expenditure compression has to be resorted to by the government of India in the face of revenue shortfall. And despite that, there is some budgetary allocation increase for education. My point is that if you take into consideration the real and the per capita, because the massification, the drive is on. I mean, we are going to raise the gross enrollment rate from the existing around 30% of the relevant age cohort to 50% by 2035. So if it is per capita and real terms, then we are not spending enough. And what is the thrust? That you take loans from HIPAA. And for all other universities and colleges, there's a pressure that you mobilize resources from other sources. And the students are also being pushed to education loans. So just a couple of numbers before I stop. Look at the world-class university. There is a focus on internationalization, and that has been mentioned in the National Education Policy 2020. It's all about global positioning, but without there being any foundation base. World-class university, last year, the budgetary allocation was drastically cut to 475 crore. But what we see that they have ended up spending twice as what was budgeted for. So during the course of the year, there was a change in the approach towards the world-class university. That is what I believe. And therefore, they ended up spending twice as much than what they budgeted for. And for the budget estimate this year, 26-27, they are going to maintain the level. Indian knowledge system, we could not spend what was budgeted for, 50 to 12, but this time we are going to raise it by almost 3 times, 2.9 times to 35. Research and innovation, and it has already been mentioned by in the first Arushi's presentation, it is all about multidisciplinary education and research improvement in technical education. It has been a drastic rise compared to the revised estimate. PM Research Fellowship, drastic rise from 290 to 600, almost twice as much compared to the revised estimate. Global engagement is being maintained, ANRF and all other things, right? So there is a reorientation, and that is a signaling how education could be integrated deeply with this thing, with the growth of the nation that we have been envisaging. We are very optimistic about it. So I will end with just 1 or 2 brief comments. Atmanirbharata is the soul. At the national level, it's fine. But at the institutional level and individual level, when we don't sell what we deliver in teaching and research, it's very, very difficult because there is a clash between financial autonomy and institutional autonomy. So if you generate a kind of very competitive scenario in the higher education sector through regulatory interventions and the mode of financing, then my point is that the good universities would do better and the mediocre universities will decline over the years, because some of the good universities, I have already given you the statistics, small colleges and universities would not be able to survive the competition. So we are moving towards a very bipolar kind of structure, where there will be some good universities at the top and the majority would be trying to survive at the end. The second is the government is also focusing on regulation. The bill is not yet tabled in the parliament, I believe, the Viksit Bharat 6 Southeastern Bill. And the Viksit Bharat has been added with the 6 Southeastern Bill. So the message is very loud and clear. The regulatory interventions are to be made to realize the goal of Viksit Bharat. Now, here the problem is that if you don't build up the capacity, then we can't really comply with the regulatory interventions. Everything will be on paper, but not with the kind of conviction that we should ensure. So if you want to leverage education's potential for realizing the goal of Viksit Bharat, good, but then you look at the inclusivity of the growth, and the most important concept, which is not very often talked about, is the concept of humane growth. And that is somehow getting relegated from the narrative or from the discourse that we are engaged in. So there is a reorientation, but the base is very fragile. I'll not talk about what Professor Ghosh has already mentioned. Science and technology are 2 different domains with a very strong intersection. And engineering also helps the mode 1 or the foundational science. And when I see the lab in the colleges, universities, the science lab, they are not getting enough money. So you are spending money on certain sectors, getting concentrated without being very careful and concerned about the foundation. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Saumen. That's precisely the point. I mean, the point that you were really saying is that, we talk about inclusiveness. And at what level, we are really discussing this aspect of inclusivity is also very important for all of us to, in fact, take note of. Say, for example, I mean, let us put up, say, some of the statistics which, in fact, is there in the economic survey. The government itself confesses that there are say in the early the primary level 6 to, or maybe let's put it 4 to a 10-year age group, we still have nearly about 10% plus children who are out of school. I mean that's the statistics based on the GER, but if you have the net enrollment ratio, then things would be different. And of course, there is a lot of variation across the country. Uh, we one thing that the government has been talking about is PM Shri schools and so on and so forth. It really doesn't, our emphasis, I think, the discussion here has also emphasized so much on higher education, which is very important. But the school education tends to receive very little critical input in the light of whatever that has been provided through the budgetary allocation. One thing that we can see is that there is this all India phenomenon, whether ruled by A state, or A country, or A party or B party, following the NEP, that there is a widespread rationalization and closure of schools. I mean, Saumen talked about colleges with 100 or maybe less than 1,000 enrollment and so on and so forth. Government has been talking about schools, which are non-economic and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, we have such provisions where every district would have one girls' hostel, uh, which really raises questions pertaining to gender equity, and also on the larger scale, it also raises questions pertaining to equity in general. I mean, because Indian districts could be of the size of, say, a county in United States of America. I mean, Indian districts are so densely populated. So a district as a unit of allocating resources has one aspect of the advantage and the disadvantage also. So when schools are getting closed down, if we look into the distribution of these schools which have been closed down in different parts of the country, we have a large number of them coming from areas where you have the tribal population and populations which are dispersed. Uh, it is there that you have the enrollment ratios maybe, or enrollment size maybe in schools could be very small. I mean, one can go on and on, but then the question is, at the same time, this provision in the allocation is that the tribal areas have been especially given greater emphasis in school sector. So how do we really look at this kind of a contradiction which is emerging? Secondly, PLFS 23-24 talked about, and this I'm again quoting from the economic survey, that 2 crore children in the age of 14 to 18 are out of school uh, in 23-24. That means, there is very little effort being made to, in fact, seek continuation of children or retention of children in school. And the numbers could vary between boys and girls. But it's also very important that if we look into the social composition of those who are out of school, on which, of late there is very little information available, I think, it could be far more challenging. So if the orientation is to uh, ensure that only some, because, vocationalization is there, being encouraged at the school level also, and of course at the university level. But given the experiences of, say, 5 years of NEP and the allocation mechanisms, I think, I would like the panelists to talk about the issues of equity, the issues of inclusivity and access, because that's going to be, according to DIAS data itself, there has been 1.2 crore children have been found nowhere. I mean, this is on the basis of the 2024 data. So that means, there are very strong indications that, these closure or rationalization is adversely affecting, or it is not affecting, or it is making things look better because the learning outcomes are getting better because there is a concentrated kind of an effort. Similarly, concentration of resources in certain areas, opening, say, 5 industrial hubs, I mean, educational hubs near industrial hubs, about which Professor Khadria also talked about. Now, well, this kind of a vision, where will it take us in years to come? I mean, that's the point which I would like to come back to again. First, I would like to go to Professor Khadria and then to um, Dr. Kundu.
Okay.
Professor Khadria.
Yeah, thank you, Sachi. Uh, yeah, there are a lot of learning which took place for me. Rupamanjari and Saumen and Nalin all made very important points, and of course, yours summing up was also the icing on the cake. Let me begin with the last point that you mentioned about the university townships, the 5 university townships. It reminds me of the parallels in other countries and at the same time contradictions in this whole issue of having such islands of excellence to be created. For example, in Gulf countries, you do have university cities. They call them university cities, but they are exclusively very much oriented towards having foreign students. Foreign students. These are actually foreign universities which are set up there, foreign universities and foreign students from developing countries. So if we look at those kind of parallels, it tallies well with the India's Vikasit Bharat, or whatever you call it, that the education policy 2020 also talks about having foreign students rather than Indian students going abroad. And that's why you tend to have, campuses in India of foreign universities. Now, these are issues which need to be weaved with the broader policy issues. For example, in this particular budget, one small issue which is put under the education sector is TCS. TCS is tax collected at source for remittances outside the country, going outside the country. For if it was 5% for on education, and then up to a limit, and then it can be more than that. That has been brought down to 2%, saying that now it would be ease of education abroad for Indian students. Indian parents can send money abroad by paying just 2% tax, which should be collected in advance. Now, is it not contradictory to the issue that we need to have foreign students in India? Now, on the one hand, we are encouraging students to go abroad. And what happens to those students? Are they coming back? Only 20% of them have likelihood of coming back. Rest of them will not come back. So these are issues which are very important in the long run, that we need to, the budget should have that far sight. It is an annual budget, but it should have a perspective of, say, Vikasit Bharat next 20 years, 21 years, and so on. That part is something which is very weak, and we need to put our minds together and project it properly, that this is taken care of. What happens to the syllabus? Now, syllabus is something which is very important ingredient, and I think Protiva also had mentioned about this in the school level or in the college level or university level. Are we having our syllabus revised properly, making it, say, in line with AI development or other issues? We are not. In fact, our teachers are becoming redundant. Our industry, IT industry, is scared now that they would lose business to AI. So these are some issues which need to be taken into account in terms of what is there in store for us to look at. You have mentioned about equity issues. Equity issue is important from the point of view if you are still having government schools, government universities, public sector universities, and so on. And that's where we find that there is actually retraction. We are actually going backwards. And that is also reflected in the consolidation of the deficit. Like Protiva, when she mentioned that how is this? It is window dressing actually. It is just projected to have that, deficit coming down by non-utilization. So we need to look at these. When we talk about annual budget, we need to say that this is an annual budget, but it is in line. It has a history from earlier years, and then it has projections to be weaved into for future. That part is completely lacking. We are just looking at the budget as standalone and comparing the figures in percentage terms, and then saying it is better if it goes up. If it declines, then it is worse, which need not be so. Thank you.
So can we say, Professor Khadria, that we have to settle down in our mind that, okay, well, the question of equity and affordability, inclusivity makes sense only at the level of political speeches, but when it comes to translating it in terms of allocations, I think we are doing just the reverse. So higher education and secondary education is not meant for everybody. It is meant for only exclusive number of people belonging to certain classes and so on and so forth. So one should be then looking at the budgetary allocation, as you rightly pointed out, that it is not just this year, but what has been happening in the last 3-4 years following NEP, and what is the kind of projection that we can perhaps see in years to come. That would perhaps, provide us the kind of background or maybe the material to discuss things, and so which is the direction which we are going. So I think that's one take which I can see emerging from everybody, that yes, the state has certainly abandoned the idea of equity. It has certainly abandoned the idea that education is meant for everybody. That it will continue to do such lip services of opening a hostel here and a hostel there, but would certainly discourage any kind of systematic attempt towards enlarging the scope of scholarships, because everybody cannot perhaps go and borrow money from banks. So therefore, much of it will remain market driven. Yeah, so we have already entered that phase. Fairly good.
Exactly.
Fairly.
You mentioned the loans, educational loans to students borrow. What happens to the students in United States?
Yeah.
It has become an election issue that the government is under pressure to waive the loans that the American students have taken the loans. So that I think is extremely important. And teacher supply, which is the pillar of success of education, we have not talked about. Nobody wants to go into teaching. You and I will perhaps somehow survive, and then we'll fight for our pension till we die.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. You are right.
Rupamanjari
Absolutely.
is also in the same.
All three of us, at least, we can identify three of us. Yeah. I think,
Saumen
Saumen could be very much in line. Not so quickly, nevertheless.
I don't have pension. I don't have pension.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, but we'll certainly fight for you. Nevertheless. So now we come to Protiva, because I had cut her short on her presentation. If she has something, because now I think, with remaining time, what should be the direction of our debate, or what we should be expecting? Nalinji, Rupaji, everybody should perhaps, put in some bit of their ideas that given the current situation and the pattern of expenditure, what is the kind of educational scenario we are anticipating, and what needs to be done? I mean, that's more important, the direction. We have looked at the nitty-gritty of it. This is there, this is not there, this should have been better. But, let's talk about both philosophically and empirically. as to which is the direction in which we should try to put in our suggestions for the government and for, of course, the listeners to in fact concentrate on for the future. So okay, so Prativa, and then
Yeah.
we'll go to Rupaji and Nalin, and then Saumen will again have the last word. If Binodji could add finally, because that would be very essential. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just before going to that, we haven't talked much about scholarships. As you mentioned about the equity, and scholarship is a very strong fiscal tool. Some just two, three data points I would like to highlight. There is pre-matric scholarship for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, minorities, and students with disabilities. Uh, in 24-25 BE, 440 crore was given for pre-matric scholarship for scheduled tribe, and unme se only 164 crore have been utilized. For minorities, 326 crores given, and only 1.5 crore has been utilized. So this give us, I mean, similarly for the other the vulnerable sections who are there is demand for scholarships, but ultimately that is not realized. So that is a challenge. And also we are talking about this girls hostel in every
Pratibha,
district.
Pratibha,
Yeah.
is it that there is demand and it is not being realized? What is the difficulty? I think the main difficulty is the household income, or maybe family income, which in fact the minimum or whatever is the threshold, which because of which applications are being rejected, or whatever. Where is the problem? I mean, you have allocation, but finally it doesn't translate into.
Yes, so problem in various stages, starting from the whenever you are submitting the application, from there to whenever finally you are getting the money in every stages. One of the reasons, of course, related to document, but not that the threshold because of threshold, but different reasons. The government is one union government is saying that states are not demanding from states. The demand is not coming through the portal, so some administrative factors are there, but demand is there, because if whenever look at the data of beneficiary vis-a-vis who have getting the scholarship, there is a huge gap. So there is demand. um, Secondly, about the girls hostel, see there is, but we couldn't find any line item where the money would be given, finance. But at the same time, there is one scheme of Ministry of Higher Education, Department of Higher Education for PM Girls Hostel, that probably is going to discontinue it, because this year there was no budget for that scheme. So there is a contradiction in the vision. And whenever saying about what is the pathway in if, what we have seen in the union budget, somewhere we are talking about foundation, but foundation is not it is not the basis, but skilling over schooling is rather giving more thrust. But even when I look at the skilling, even there is not much planning, not much allocation, not that ecosystem is present. I mean, let's look at the Ministry of Skill Development's budget. I mean, till December, it has able to spend only 15% of the total budget given. We have talked so much about Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, but the CAG report has come recently, and CAG report is saying that 4 phases of this scheme has operated, but it only helped. I mean, able to in the 5 years only able to generate 43% of employment. And another very interesting fact that I think we should look at is the PM internship programs. It was highlighted that 5 years, 1 crore job would be created, and around 10,000 crore allocation had happened, but the utilization is only 526 crores. And when there is data in the Lok Sabha question that how many have you, I mean, how many have got taken the internship? It has been reported that 1.65 lakh around internship position has been created, but only uptake was 21%. So even the companies are also not taking and students are not willing. So already there was a mismatch between the demand and the kind of skill present. At the same time, on the supply side also, there are various challenges. The kind of role given, the distance where the internships created, the places where to go, and then the kind of money that they are getting. And study also is saying that those who have got informal vocational training, their chance of getting job is much higher than those who are getting formal vocational training. Whereas the formal vocational training, only 7% actually has got formal vocational training, because our mostly ITIs are not there. Only 11,000 ITIs are there, and many of them are not properly functional. Only 20%, 22% are government run. So these kind of challenges are there. So even whenever we are talking about skilling, that whole infrastructure or ecosystem is not present. But the fact is, now I think we need to look at at the state government or state budget, because the core of the, especially when we talk about school education, the core of which is teachers or teachers training. Both these, the allocate or the resources for both these is now state's responsibility, because after the 12 5-year plan, union government is no more going to give money for any teacher recruitment through any schemes. And when it comes to capacity building, the kind of unit cost was earlier there like 500 rupees per teacher. This has now come down to almost 100 rupees per teacher for 10 days, and that is completely shifted towards the digital portal like Nishtha and Diksha. So, we can see that the kind of teaching material courses are there are not working, or the new emerging challenges that Professor Khadria has talked about: growing urbanization, growing climate threat, the pollution, these kind of things, the climate policy that needs to be integrated with the education policy. Those things are missing, because in that line there is a need for thinking towards the allocation. So I think we need to work with states. Many state budgets are coming. Bihar has increased its share. Kerala is making education free till post graduation. They are, trying in different ways, but where the more resources would be required, I feel it is the secondary education. That is the most in the whole education pillar is suffering heavily, especially in terms of teachers. Subject teachers are not there. Schools are not there, labs are not there. Very you asked about the data of science streams or any other that data is 23 24 was last. We don't have the, in fact, data is another challenge, another area where actually there needs to be focus on. So I think secondary education, school education, because the thrust towards out of school children, they should go for open schooling, that kind of low skill labor ultimately through vocational education. That kinds of thought is actually hampering, and even that is not ready. NIOS are not functioning well. State level open schools are not there. Only 10 states have something, but they are again struggling with fund. So government cannot withdraw its responsibility. Finance Commission report has come, and it has actually many kind of challenges are there. Finance Commission is also talking about if fund is not look at the social sector, centrally sponsored schemes. If they are not, there is unspent balance in many of majority of the schemes, just merge them or not merge them or discontinue with them. So towards that, government is working with the new changed public finance management system, but we are not actually trying to diagnose why the states are not able to spend, because so many challenges are there in terms of getting the money. And I'm stopping here. Thank you. You are mute, sir.
You are muted. Sachi, you are muted. Open your unmute.
So sorry. Yeah, I'm, I'm so sorry. So we have to end up by 12:30, and and it's already just 12 minutes to go. My pinpointed question to Professor Rupamanjari Ghosh. Do we spend enough on science, technology, and R&D? If we do not, then more needs to be done. And where do you think what should be our roadmap for years to come?
If you ask me personally, I would say no. Of course, we don't spend enough. But the problem is what I had pointed out earlier. I really like hearing about people analyzing, the experts here, challenges in school education, because you cannot talk about higher education and research in isolation. School is what is feeding into the sector, and we see the performances. But let me make a blunt statement first, is that higher education is more about creating new knowledge and excellence. And I think that's the basic thing. And mediocrity has no place. Now, mediocrity, how do you judge it, is what I have already hinted at, that if you're getting reoriented to serve the economy only through skilling and innovation of a commercial sense, then that's not ambitious enough. That's not my definition of excellence. So, given the overall problem of our economy and all, I don't think it's about spending enough, but spending with the right focus. And I think I talked about it. Whatever you decide, if you have funding volatility of the kind I mentioned, you start with a big gimmick, one mission, next year you start another one, and you do not bother about continuing on this, assuming that higher education is all about these gimmicks, that you have a magic wand, and next year you'd be the expert and bring in excellence in particular areas to address the problems that the world is facing, address the problem the nation is facing. So particularly what I have already mentioned again, let me go back to that you can't eat programs. The AI is all good, but you need physical solutions to address the real problems of this country and the world. Food, medicines, energy, clean air, clean water, they don't come from AI. If you have a physical solution, then AI is an enabler and a multiplier. And I think that's where I want focused investment, sustained investment in particular areas with full understanding of where we wish to be. And it cannot be a gimmick one year and another gimmick the next year. And the school education needs to be strengthened for us to reach where we wish to reach. And I think the entire philosophy of serving the economy is a bit short-sighted. And I think that's not doing us real good. You need to run some parallel missions. I'm agreeable for short-term skilling to address the problems today. But long-term, even long-term meaning 4 years, 3 years, 3 to 4 to 5 years, we need to have a vision that's a little further. So the vision of the budget, I want that to be changed. And it's depending on the quantum, I can create an excellent system out of that. And I think that's the thing. It's not the money, it's the emphasis that is at the wrong place. And that's what my regret is actually, year after year.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, you rightly stated it's not just the money, but which is not sufficient, as you said, at the outset, but, where the money and how the money has to be spent, that there has to be sustained effort, not just picking up one project today and another tomorrow and saying goodbye to the older ones, as it has already been happening in this country for a fairly long period of time. We need to really emphasis. There has to be an emphasis on what we need to do, and we sustain it. You rightly pointed out that school education has to be given its due, and we have to strengthen. Protima also said, secondary education, we don't have teachers, we don't have labs, we don't have. The statistics tell us that 90% of the schools have libraries. But what they call library? One shelf in a cupboard is the library in schools. I can tell you because I do a lot of field work, and this is the last year's field work that I'm referring to. in schools. I mean, some schools are better off, but large number of schools are of that kind. So we need to have a long-term a vision, and perhaps any expenditure which takes place in the absence of the vision is not going to be um, a productive one. And of course, technology and science are outcomes of an effort which is made much earlier, and it requires a larger vision, not just looking at education and employment linkages as the ultimate goal, which I think you have. I mean, this is what is emerging not only from your presentation, but also from everybody else's. So now the final two, Nalinji and Saumen, 3 minutes each before we wind it up. Yeah, Nalinji.
So I will take less than 3. So
Okay, thank you.
two important point. One is till now we are looking that it is the government-led R&D which is happening in India. It has to change its strategy, and not only the government-led R&D, but the private-led R&D. And when we are saying this, because when we are saying this, we have to also see how other countries has performed well in the R&D, such as Korea or Japan or China. So R&D cannot be the matter for private sectors to go on as long as when the government is not providing incentives. So like PLI, product link incentives, why not RLI, research linked incentive? If the private investors are doing some research related activities and they are bringing some good output, we have to must incentivize instead of putting money only in the public sector enterprises. Why not we can just give the target to the private sectors, and then we have to link it to the academic institutions also. So we are concerned about AI, that is artificial intelligence, but we are not at all concerned about another AI, that is academia industry linkage. So these 2 points which comes to my mind and which needs to be taken care in future, because ultimately if we are allotting, we are not able to expend that money, finally we are in the vicious circle of not having R&D, basically poor R&D trap. We are in the poor R&D trap. We have to come out. And if we have to come out, we have to think on another strategy in R&D, because with this small investment, I am repeatedly saying that we are doing well. We are doing lots of better job than other countries. So why not we can have a new strategies for R&D and new model for R&D investment, and that can also invite FDI in R&D, that is RD FDI, and we can have better collaborations when I say AI, academia industry linkage, not only within the country, but also outside the country. And we should be more open enough in R&D activities, even if it is from outside. So that is my take.
Thank you, Professor Saumen.
Yeah, very briefly, higher education sector is very difficult to govern, is very difficult to reform, and capacities are built up only over a period of time, right? You can't look for an immediate return from investment in higher education. Now, having said this, I'll reiterate what Professor Ghosh has said, the reorientation is taking place, but that is at the expense of erosion of a base. And is it the right kind of reorientation? Now, my last point would be, I'm just asking a question, and you have to go beyond the budget to look at the entire gamut of policies which are affecting the higher education sector, and beyond the center and look at the state also. But my take, the last point that I would like to say here, is that leadership is very important. And the leadership has to be given the true autonomy, and the leadership has to trust the faculty, and the faculty has to trust the leader. Professor Ghosh has gone through and has led an excellent university to scale new heights, and she knows it better. And I'm in a public funded university. I think we realized that this collegiality the camaraderie is of ultimate importance, other than regulation and funding, to get the best out of us. So that is what is, I think, the government should liberate us from excessive political intervention, trust us, and give us good leader to lead us. Thank you.
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर खादरिया सर। बस आपको गुड नाइट कहने के पहले आपको गुड नाइट ही कहना पड़ेगा, या हो सकता है सुबह हो गई हो वहां पे। आपके आखिरी विचार इस मुद्दे पे। Yeah, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm following you in remaining muted. But I agree, and I'm glad that Saumen has mentioned this. The autonomy and freedom is extremely important, whether it is public sector or private sector, or you say whether it is a public-private partnership. Unless and until I am given the freedom of thought and freedom of speech, higher education or knowledge creation will not take place. That Rupa mentioned knowledge creation. But let me come back to what Protiva Kundu had mentioned about the state of the ITIs, the state of the ITIs. And the Jugaad, Jugaad, those who learn through Jugaad, they are successful. Those who go to ITIs, they just languish there. And that's where I think it is important for us to put our money into these vocational educational institutions or programs, because what is happening now, we are just taking pride in sending our young people, younger generation, in the name of giving them an opportunity to learn abroad for skilling. You perhaps might have heard that large number of our youth have been sent to Israel, to Greece, to Japan, to get skills. I mean, that's a shame actually, because why can't we give them those skills? We can bring the teachers here, and we can, modernize our ITI, these ITIs and the polytechnics and so on, so that vocational education can be, at the moment our vocational education is a outcast. It is looked down upon, whether you and I can send our children there or not. Probably we have to feel proud that we can send them. For example, in US and other countries, we talk about learning from other countries. You have parallel, channels whereby you go into those community colleges. At one point in time, UGC had thought of community colleges, but it did not pick up. Whereby you spend a number of years and it's hands-on practice. You learn the vocation and so on. So it has to be balanced, and it will be a step towards equity, because you put people from the lower and middle, I'll say lower income group people, into colleges and universities and give them aspirations, and at the end they are neither here nor there. So that kind of a situation is not giving them freedom. It is actually putting them under shackles. And that, I think, is important, that every budget takes that into account, keeps that into account, and think that this is an opportunity in a long tunnel of perspective planning, which can be of 10 years or more. That's where I'll stop.
Thank you, Professor Khadria. With this final note, I must confess that this education, R&D, science and technology within the context of the current budget is a very, very restricted area, or maybe a space within which we are really trying to discuss things. It really requires a much more wider kind of framework of understanding, because, as you said, everybody agrees that our educational system is in a transition mode, and there are a lot many challenges which are there. We really require perspective planning, and we require convincing data. We require blueprints for what is the course that we have to cover in what period of time. We may fail, we may succeed, but we have to be consistent. I mean, that's very important. There is no sustainable effort towards believing in some kind of an objective. I mean, perhaps we keep, as I said right in the beginning, we keep shifting the goalpost every now and then, and whether it is school education or higher education. And finally, education has to remain free from political interference, the kind of interference that we see even with curriculum and school curriculum far more dangerously. And these are all areas which we really need to think, because you know even by the time we have Viksit Bharat for 2047, we would be somewhere about 20% of the population would be in this age group where the education and the kind of resources that it would require would remain not very different from what it is now. Maybe there would be a quantum shift in the nature of expenditure itself, because there will be new areas, emerging areas, where investment would take place, whether it comes from government or it comes from the private sector or whatever be the nature. But in terms of science and technology and R&D, I'm convinced about the fact. I mean, I think we have people who have done far more serious research in this area. Government will have to take the 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 initiative, be it United States of America or any other part of the developed world. I think much of investment comes from government funding. Private only follows it, and to the extent it can follow, good. Otherwise, again, government cannot wait. It will have to invest in people, as we all read long time ago when I started reading a little about educational economics. I still remember that phrase, investment in machine versus investment in men. Anderson and Bauman's work, and that also partly was on India. Arthur Lewis deliberating as to whether primary education or higher education. All those debates apart, we do not stand in isolation. The schools are not in contradiction or isolation of the higher education. So there is no contradiction, I think, and creating hubs of the kind, concentrated hubs here and there, will certainly not solve the problem. We have a very strong infrastructure of higher education. It needs to be further strengthened. Don't always create new ones and forget about the old ones. ये घर का में खर्चा नहीं चल रहा है तो ऐसा थोड़ी है कि आप हर जगह में हर दूसरे बार नई शादी कर लेंगे, मतलब ये फॉर्मूला नहीं चलता है ना, चाहे मर्द के लिए हो या औरत के लिए। तो शुक्रिया आप सबों का, सभी पैनलिस्ट का, खास करके विनोद भाई का, क्योंकि वो यूएस में हैं और इस रात हम उनको जगाए हुए हैं। मेरे ख्याल से 2 बजने वाले होंगे सर आपके यहाँ। आप बंद है, आपने बंद कर रखा है।
आपने 1 घंटा एडवांस कर दिया ना मेरे लिए सबकी,
नहीं नहीं नहीं,
सबको
बहुत
1 घंटा
बहुत
पहले बुला लिया।
आप जुड़ गए, यही हमारे लिए बहुत बढ़िया बात है। रूपा जी बहुत दिनों बाद मिले, लेकिन सभी जुड़े, सौमेन दा, नलिन जी, प्रतिभा तो हमेशा इनकी बातों से स्टेटिस्टिक्स में मिलती है, समझ भी बनती है। और इम्प्री को हमारा बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, हम सबों की तरफ से, पैनल की तरफ से भी, कि आपने ये मौका दिया। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू।
थैंक
थैंक यू।
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, before we conclude with today's deliberation, I would like to seek your permission if we could play Professor Mona Khare ma'am's a video for her views on the budget 26.
Okay, please do.
Thank you, sir.
All in all, I think this budget continues the spirit of the earlier budget, but yes, it certainly falls short of our 6% target of GDP to be invested in education. There are some important and good announcements which have been made, but the role of the states is predominantly important. It is predominant and it is extremely important. There have been some shifts also in terms of the taxes and also in terms of the shift in the social sector or the welfare approach to creating girls' hostel or investments in girls' hostel, moving it to the capital expenditure and all, which can be seen as a positive step because that helps to create a continuity in the proposed scheme rather than keeping it as short-term subsidy-based kind of an approach to developing women's hostels, because as increasing number of women are coming into the system, it is one important requirement also. I would just like to close my remarks by drawing attention to another important announcement which has been made in this budget in terms of creating a education to employment and enterprise standing committee, which again is seems to be a step in the right direction, because this committee can kind of support, because this is also a gray area. There is a lot of gap in terms of the academic sector being able to understand the requirements of the industry sector. So whenever it comes to curriculum design or it comes to skills, designing the skills training programs, etc., there is a big gap between the industry and the academia, and that bridge between the two is missing for the larger higher education sector in our country. So this possibly this standing committee can play an important role in bridging that gap. Also another factor which needs to be highlighted here is that this budget certainly talks about or has made many announcements in terms of strengthening the technical education system in the country, driving the new technology, learning the new technology by the youth. But a larger proportion of our student community is still studying social sciences and humanities. They are still enrolled in small colleges and universities across the country, and there is very little which has been talked in this budget for this subsector of the higher education system. So that is one area which needs to be given some amount of thought. I hope that the state governments will take care of this aspect. On that note, thank you very much for your time, and I will also request you to excuse me as I would not be able to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Monaji. Thank you. The organizers can convey our thanks to Professor Khare. So over to the organizers, and we close the session, I think.
Yes, we are deeply grateful to all our panelists for this insightful discussion, and thank you to the participants for your thoughtful questions and active engagement. Thank you, sir. With this, I would like to proceed to a formal vote of thanks. As we conclude this panel discussion on the Education, Science and Technology, Research and Development and Union Budget 2026-27, I, Arushi Pathania, on behalf of IMPRI, Center for ICT for Development, CICTD, New Delhi, extend my heartfelt gratitude. Our deepest thanks to our chair and experts for today. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists for their insightful and thought-provoking addresses. Your expertise and perspectives have greatly enriched today's discussion and provided us with valuable takeaways on this critical topic. We deeply appreciate your time and contributions. We also thank all our participants who joined us live, raised pertinent questions, and contributed to today's dialogue. For those watching later on our YouTube channel, listening to the podcasts, or reading our publications, we deeply value your engagement and trust. We look forward to welcoming you to our next Union Budget Deliberation series in the coming year and to your continued participation in our other events. We hope you will continue to engage with us through future IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning programs. Wishing you all a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.